A group of kids joyfully climbs and slides down a pyramid structure. Next, we meet new recruits at the Vertical Self-Management Center, mostly criminals. The interviewer asks them to choose a favorite meal and an object to keep. Zamyatan, one of the recruits, insists he wants pizza every day, joking about his disappointment if he doesn't get it. The interviewer reveals he once tried to burn his parents' house down. Later, Zamyatan is in cell 24 with his cellmate Perun. Their food is delivered by a hovering platform, which provides little food for lower-level inmates. When the platform arrives, Zamyatan finds that all the meat from his pizza has been eaten by someone on the 21st floor. Frustrated, he tries to eat a chicken wing but is stopped by Robespierre and his cellmate, who explain that the Loyalists require everyone to eat their own food or trade to prevent chaos and starvation. Zamyatan asks about the man who took his meat, and Robespierre explains that rule breakers, or barbarians, will be punished. Despite this warning, Zamyatan attempts to eat the wing, but Perun stops him as well and offers him some of her meat-filled croquettes. This convinces Zamyatan to leave the chicken wing alone, but he warns he doesn't want any surprises starting tomorrow. Robespierre explains that while they are in upper cells now, they might be in lower ones next time, so they need to consider others and follow the rules. He urges Zamyatan to eat quickly before the platform leaves, as holding onto food could lead to severe punishment. Afterward, Perun and Zamyatan introduce themselves. Suddenly, Robespierre starts shouting that communication has been lost on level 44, and they're unsure if food distribution has been fair. When Perun asks about the number of cells, Robespierre reveals there are 333, emphasizing that ensuring food reaches everyone is what matters most. He mentions that tomorrow, Loyalists from levels 19 and 20 will defend Zamyatan's pizza on the 21st floor. The next day, as Zamyatan and Perun wait for the food platform, they hear that upper-level Loyalists are fighting the barbarian who ate Zamyatan's pizza. Robespierre instructs them to break their bed frames and be ready to defend themselves, but Zamyatan, despite his tough appearance, is scared and pleads against fighting. Shortly after, the barbarian lands in Robespierre's cell, leading to a fierce brawl. Their struggle is so intense that they tumble into cell 24 as the platform descends. Meanwhile, Robespierre's cellmate desperately tries to clean up spilled food but fails. As punishment, her cell catches fire and she falls onto the platform, engulfed in flames. Perun rushes to help her while Zamyatan stands frozen in shock. Robespierre manages to knock the barbarian unconscious, and they quickly remove the food from their level, knowing it will freeze if held too long. Perun informs them that the burned woman has died and asks Robespierre what he will do with the barbarian. He explains that he will take him to the Anointed Ones, a group formed by a master who created the rules. Robespierre shares that this master survived a month without food by cutting flesh from his thighs to feed others, who then became responsible for fair food distribution. Zamyatan doubts this and suggests feeding the crooked woman to the hungry inmates. But Robespierre insists that cannibalism is illegal and throws her body into the pit. The next day, the food platform arrives at level 24, and everyone begins to eat. Suddenly, Robespierre takes the food from his dead cellmate and dumps it in the toilet, stating that the law forbids anyone from eating more than one plate. He insists that no one should benefit from another's death and orders them to dispose of the food daily before descending with the barbarian to find the Anointed Ones. In the following days, Zamyatan and Perun grow closer, supporting each other while peacefully eating and disposing of the dead woman's food daily. Zamyatan occasionally takes a bite, which other inmates in cell 22 notice. A month later, they wake up in cell 180 having been knocked out and transported by gas. Zamyatan is frustrated and fears starvation, but Perun remains hopeful that the Loyalists will provide food. Unfortunately, when the platform arrives, it only has empty dishes. The situation worsens and they lie down all day, growing increasingly restless and weak, especially Zamyatan. One day, a head falls from above, and the inmates feel relieved that justice has been served for those who broke the rules. Zamyatan continues to cough up blood, and Perun cares for him with a wet cloth. They learn that the Anointed Ones are punishing barbarians and searching for rule breakers. When asked about their previous cell, Perun lies, saying it was 46. That evening, Zamyatan, wrapped in a blanket, confesses to Perun that he no longer wants to live, overwhelmed by his past mistakes. Despite her attempts to stop him, he sets himself on fire and jumps into the hole, falling to the bottom where others watch with amusement. The scene shifts to Perun waking up in cell 51, where she meets a new roommate missing her left hand. Assuming the woman is new, Perun explains the rules and warns her not to eat others' food. Later, a commotion arises as inmates discover a barbarian on level 54 attacking his new cellmate. It's revealed that he was on level 2 last month and would eat until he vomited. Perun offers to help, but others remind her that only 2 levels above are allowed to intervene. Seeing her distress, the cellmate asks what happened, prompting Perun to share the story of Zamyatan, who died because of the law-breaking barbarians. The next morning, a severed head is thrown into the pit, prompting inmates to shout that Dajin Babi, the leader of the Anointed Ones, is punishing the barbarians and will save them all. Moments later, the platform arrives, and Perun and her cellmate decide to descend and confront the troublemaker from level 54. However, the other inmates hesitate, fearing that leaving will disrupt their communication. Despite this, the women are determined to seek justice. A man volunteers to stay behind to maintain the chain, while the others proceed to confront the barbarian. When they reach level 54, they find the barbarian waiting for them. Everyone attacks the barbarian at once, but he proves tough and manages to kill several inmates. After a fierce struggle, he descends further, with Perun and her cellmate in pursuit. The barbarian kills another man on level 55, but Perun eventually pins him down and raises a rod to strike. Just then, the barbarian begs for mercy, claiming he only wanted enough food to recover from starvation. After a moment's thought, Perun decides to let him go, and he climbs the platform to descend. Her cellmate, eager to follow, is stopped by Perun. Later, the cellmate reveals she has been there for 6 months. She explains that when she arrived, her previous cellmate, Kakashi, taught her the rules. They always followed the law and participated in pacifications. However, one day they fed a malnourished boy food from a dead person, and when Dajin Bobby found out, he amputated Kakashi's hand as punishment. When it came to Kakashi, she fought back against her punishment and gouged out the man's eyes. In response, Dajin tied her up naked on the platform and sent her to the bottom. The woman sobs as she recounts having to watch Kakashi being eaten by cannibals. Perun is shocked but insists that not all anointed ones are the same. However, her cellmate stresses that no one can survive in the pit and that they will eventually die. She reveals that the only chance to escape is during the gas knockouts when the authorities change the cells. Perun wonders how they can stay awake during that time, and her cellmate explains that she has been searching for a solution for months and believes they must keep going down. The next morning, Perun and her cellmate are horrified to see a bound and naked man on the platform. Her cellmate warns that they need to leave before Dajin arrives. Unfortunately, Dajin soon appears, wearing a cloth over his eyes and looking like a messiah. He and his henchmen capture the 2 women and other inmates who fought the barbarian the previous day. Dajin accuses them of breaking the rules, stating that only inmates from 2 levels above are allowed to engage with the barbarian. He decides to punish them and those who supported their actions by mutilating everyone's hands. Since Perun's cellmate is already mutilated, she will be tied up naked and sent to the bottom of the pit, just like her former cellmate. After announcing this, Dajin and his henchmen begin attacking everyone and cutting off their hands. The inmates scream and cry in defiance, but it's futile. Tragically, Perun's cellmate meets the same fate as her friend and soon dies. The next day, Perun wakes up on level 72 with an amputated hand and meets her new cellmate, an old man named Trimagasi. She advises him not to talk to inmates from other levels, to which he replies that he doesn't speak to anyone because it tires him out. When she asks about his chosen object, he shows her a knife for cutting bread. Perun then remembers her former roommate's advice to keep going down and find something called the drowned dog. Later, when the platform arrives, she steps on it to descend, and Trimagasi unexpectedly joins her. Perun encourages the other inmates to join her fight against the Loyalists, and many, tired of the tyranny, eagerly support her cause. They decide to form a large army and wait for the Loyalists before launching their attack. As they descend through several levels, Perun notices something in the 93rd cell and decides to stay there. Inside, she sees an oil painting of a drowned dog and realizes this is what her former cellmate had mentioned. The next morning, Dajin and his Loyalists start to descend the platform. He orders 2 of his men to stay on each floor above the 93rd cell to remove all food from the rebels whenever the platform arrives, ensuring they won't eat for the rest of the month. Dajin and another Loyalist remain at the 92nd cell to inform the rebels of his plan, demanding their voluntary surrender and promising to spare their lives. While some older inmates agree to comply, most refuse, unwilling to return to oppression. Trimagasi jokingly suggests they should go down and eat the Loyalists, and everyone laughs and cheers in support. Days pass, and the rebels descend to lower floors, managing to survive by eating other Loyalists, although Perun refuses to eat. Frustrated by his men being consumed, Dajin decides to confront the rebels on the 105th floor. A bloody battle ensues between the Loyalists and the rebels, but amidst the chaos, the starving prisoners begin to murder one another, regardless of their sides. Meanwhile, the barbarian whom Perun had previously spared attacks her, attempting to choke her to death. However, she gains the upper hand with Trimagasi's knife and stabs him to death. In the end, only she and Trimagasi survive the battle. Perun then notices a wounded Dajin who is near death and begs her to kill him. Instead, she cruelly removes the cloth covering his gouged eyes and pushes him into the pit. Afterward, she tells Trimagasi that she plans to escape and asks if he will join her, but he chooses to stay behind, saying it was the best month of his life. Just before the gas is scheduled to be released to transport the inmates, Perun tears a piece from the oil painting, which her cellmate instructed her to do, discovering it contains toxic materials. She smells and even eats it, rendering herself unconscious to simulate death temporarily. Perun hopes the administration will remove the corpses, giving her a chance to escape the tower. Elsewhere, children are playing in the same pyramid-like structure as before. One child reaches the top, but two adults soon arrive and take him away. Later, Perun wakes up strapped to a floating mass of corpses with masked figures moving the bodies. This is how the inmates are relocated using the anti-gravity system. While the crew is distracted, Perun seizes the opportunity to break free and hides under a bed on level 333. To her shock, she sees a masked man placing the same child from earlier in the bed. Realizing they might starve and torture the child, she faces a tough decision: escape to save herself or risk her life to protect the child from the prison's horrors. Haunted by past mistakes, she chooses to protect the child and approaches him. However, in her haste, she accidentally hits her head and gets injured. She tries to escape with the child, but the injury causes her to pass out. When she regains consciousness, she finds herself and the child on a platform descending deeper into the pit. At the bottom, starving cannibals approach and tell her that her journey has ended, and she must stay with them, while the child still has a chance to return. One of the women offers her hand, and with no other option, Perun reluctantly joins them. The movie ends as the platform rises back up, carrying the child toward the surface. And with that, the movie ends. We hope you enjoyed the video. Watch the next recaps on the screen and don't forget to subscribe for more amazing recaps. See you in the next one.